My name's Steve Hanson. I'm Interim Dean for International Studies and Programs. I've got just a few remarks here and a couple slides that we want to make a couple points on before I turn it over to our main speakers. Not on. Let me try to, is it better if I get real close to it? Okay, I'll try to stay close to the mic. So today we want to recognize individuals who have dedicated time, energy, and creativity to develop, support, and lead high-impact study abroad programs. These are our faculty, our advisors, our study abroad staff, and the Dean Designees Advisory Group that has representatives from the 17 degree granting colleges. Through your extraordinary efforts, Michigan State University continues to be recognized as a leader in international education. We are one of 4 universities that rank in the top 10 in 2 categories. One being the students on campus, who are international students on campus. The other being the number of students that we send to study abroad. At the undergraduate level, if you combine the international students who come to MSU and spend their time here to get a degree, as well as the domestic students that we send abroad to study, we have over 6,500 students this year engaged in study abroad learning experiences. 1 in 4 of our undergraduate students will have a study abroad experience. That's twice the national average, or nearly twice the national average of 14%. They do this in over 275 different programs. This is across all disciplines and across all continents. We have over 200 faculty, many of you in the room here today, who are recruiting students into the programs that they'll lead overseas this year. This is by far the largest cohort in any university in the United States. Your efforts have helped MSU become a national leader in study abroad, shaping the lives of countless students, and transforming MSU into the first World Grant University. But we continue to try to get better. And Michigan State has had 2 periods where we put major task force efforts in place to take a look at how we were doing in study abroad and where we wanted to go in the future. The first of these was in 1995, and those discussions triggered President McPherson to launch, at the time, the most aggressive study abroad goal in the country. And the goal was to have 40% of our students graduating from Michigan State University with a study abroad experience. And you can see by the picture there the impact that had. So we had just a very rapid increase in the participation in study abroad. The second task force took place over 2007, 2008, and that had a lot of input from many of you in the room here. So there was about 1/3 of our faculty that provided input and over 2,000 students into that. And it did a couple things. One, it recognized the benefits of those participation goals that came out of the 1995 discussions. Among these were the important role that study abroad has played now in really enhancing MSU's World Grant brand. But there was also, I guess, another conversation that emerged out of that. One is, and it was really this, that it's not enough to just have quantity, that we also want to think about the quality of these study abroad experiences. So that launched us into another dialogue that's continuing to today. And so over the last 5 years, study abroad, working closely with the Dean's Designees Group, has been working to evolve the study abroad experience towards a more value-added experience. And this included implementing some of the task force recommendations, but also reorientating our study abroad around three themes, being quality, accessibility, and diversity. And you're going to hear more about how those 3 themes have been shaping our study abroad strategy from our speakers today. And later on, sometime this spring, you'll be asked to provide some input into helping shape this strategy as we go forward. You should have turned the slides for me, Brett. So I missed one. So anyway, so as we think about how to facilitate our movement towards quality, accessibility, and diversity, One thing we've done is adopt a set of best practices back in 2010. These were best practice guidelines that were put into place over a long conversation, about 10 years, that involved discussions across many universities, including Michigan State. And the thing that this does, especially for a large institution like Michigan State that has 275 programs, is it gives us a common language for program development and review. It also helps us to ensure that we have high quality in our programs and help guide our faculty as they're thinking about exploring new study abroad opportunities. Advancing quality, accessibility, and diversity also requires better integration across our three missions of education, research, and outreach. A couple things here. We formed a research advisory council to help align priority and resources. We now offer grants of up to $1,500 to faculty to pursue their research interest in country after they lead a study abroad experience there. We support scholarship on study abroad, such as a current research project exploring how graduate education abroad differs from undergraduate education abroad. And we've recently launched the country's first doctoral fellowship for study abroad. But our journey continues as we strive to advance our quality, accessibility, and diversity themes. As we reflect on these themes in the future of study abroad, it's important that we do this with a foundation of evidence-based scholarship. So to that end, study abroad has been leading discussions around campus. And one of these revolves around an important study by Twombly and Salisbury. And this has really been a review of what's kind of a critical review of the study abroad literature over the past 15 years. And the Dean's Designee Committee and the faculty learning community on teaching and learning abroad have been really kind of having a set of conversations around the learning outcomes approach that this book, that's called Study Abroad in a New Global Century. And if you haven't gotten it, I really recommend you do get a copy of it. And it really focuses on the learning outcomes of study abroad. And we've been having discussions around this that are really helping reshape our strategic thinking going forward. And later this spring, we're going to put together some open forums that we're going to ask you all to have some input into those discussions. But what I really want to do today is just thank you. And thank you for everything you've done for Michigan State and for study abroad. It's because of you and your leadership that thousands of our students have had the chance to learn in an international context. And I know I don't need to tell anybody in the room what an impact and a transformation that can have on our students' lives. I'm going to turn now to our speakers, and it's first my great honor to introduce Acting Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. June Youatt. Dr. Youatt's a true champion of student learning and also highly supportive of study abroad's role in student learning. As many of you know, Dr. Youatt has played a pivotal role in launching our Freshman Seminars Abroad program, which has been receiving national attention for its impact on enhancing student success. So, Dr. Youatt.
Well, thank you. I want to affirm what Steve has said in terms of thanking all of you. It may be long overdue, and I think up until now we have hoped that the appreciation of your students was thanks enough, and I know perhaps it's the truest form of thanks, but we wanted to take an opportunity to gather you in one place and tell you not just what you've meant to students, but what you've meant to Michigan State University. One evening last week, I took home some materials that I think all of you have, a little thank you certificate, and I went through and signed them. And I was struck by a couple of things. One, first of all, how many there were to sign, how many of you have done this for over 10 years and are still upright, and also how many of you I knew, and how many of you how many of the programs that you do I knew about, which says a lot about the work that you've done, that it really has become part of our institutional story and our institutional history. And I guess that's one of the things I want to thank you for today, because as Steve outlined, the success, the progress we've made in study abroad. I hope you really do understand how the work that you have done has helped forge part of the identity now of Michigan State University. Brett may allude to it, but let me tell you that for the years that I was undergraduate dean and I saw all the first-year students coming in for orientation, when between 85 and 90% of your entering students say during academic orientation that they expect to do a study abroad, it tells you something about the ways in which the work that you've done has become part of an institutional identity. That coming to Michigan State University means the opportunity and the expectation to have an international experience. And so we start from that place. For all the things that we'll talk about over the next few months about how it is that we may expand or modify or enhance the work that we do, we start from a place of realizing that this has become who we are. And as the president often says, international is part of our DNA. And so we begin from that place. Tuesday, Luana is going to spend some time talking about Bolder by Design, and she'll identify with our 6 imperatives. She'll talk specifically about some of our aspirations and some of the ways that she sees us getting there. But I think it's noteworthy to realize that when she talks about our work internationally, it's not just in the imperative that says extend international reach. Now that's significant that a university has 6 sort of planks of its strategic plan, and one of the 6 is international. But if that's all you saw, you would miss the ways in which international has become integrated into everything that we do. Because if you look a little bit closer, and you look under the expanding our research, what you will notice is that she very specifically will call out expanding our multidisciplinary, multinational research projects. And there's a good deal of information about that. And then if you look in the student experience, where you might expect there would be some mention, there are references to the work that you're doing in more than one place. Certainly, study abroad is identified as one of the, what we're calling now, high-impact learning strategies. So if you see, I know, we love acronyms around here, right? So if you see HILS, that's high-impact learning strategies. So you all are how would you say that? HILS? Y'all are part of HILS. So it's mentioned there, certainly. It's mentioned also as we think about uniquely preparing students for the 21st century workforce, because increasingly we're thinking about how it is that the value of a Michigan State University experience uniquely prepares students to really participate in their communities and in their lines of work and in their callings. How it is that we help students truly find what they're called to do, not just what will help them make money. And we want them all to take care of themselves. Trust me, I have 3 adult children who still get regular transfers. So I'm all for financial independence. But there ought to be something should happen in this place that helps students walk from here and walk into a life that can be measured in more than just the job that helps them earn what they need to earn. And we believe that part of this international experience for students is what helps that transformation. So as you look at Bolder by Design and you see study abroad as a high-impact learning strategy, as you see it as a strategy for helping students be prepared for a 21st century workforce, as you see study abroad alluded to as we think about how it is that we help students develop a broader perspective, intercultural competency, and become more cosmopolitan in the way that they approach their thinking and their approach to problem solving. So we need to ask all of you about how we make this work better. You all are we'll be talking to faculty and we'll be talking to students. You all are on the supply side, so we need to ask you what works and what doesn't work, and we need to talk with our students about what it is that they expect and what it is that they would like. But And Brett is leading these really important conversations about the quality of these experiences and what we want to get out of them and how we want to measure what we get out of them. But I am going to ask you to think maybe even a little more broadly about this, because I want you to help me worry about the things I worry about. So let me share the worry a little bit. How do we build other types of international experiences for students, even if we begin with the idea that study abroad is a core experience for many of our students, where they literally go and get credit classes? How do we build additional kinds of international experiences? Are there other types of instructional models beyond the typical classroom and travel activities that we ought to be expanding or thinking about or experimenting with? And one of the things that I hope in the next year, whatever job I have, that I'm going to continue to try to encourage is that that there are some things that we try, that we pilot some ideas, and that we learn. We are a learning institution, right? So we need to try your best ideas, because these ideas that I believe you can forward are not based on, well, someone did tell me about a great idea they had for a program over a glass of Chardonnay. I will not mention who she was, but I believe that your ideas come from more than just the inspiration of an adult beverage. I think your deep knowledge of how this works and the difference it makes will help us think about other models that we might experiment with or try. So I'd like us to think about other models. I'd like us to also think about the ways in which we work toward different kinds of curriculum integration. How is this, and certainly we have a number of models and a number of things that we've tried, but what are other kinds of ways that this truly fits in the curriculum? Not just as I'm taking a class in my major, but I'm taking it in another place. But how is it that we really engage the international experience with courses that perhaps are taught primarily here? Or I don't want to limit your thinking by suggesting, but I want you to think about other models of curriculum innovation and integration. If we believe in the value of MSU faculty-led programs, and I think everyone in this room does, and frankly I do too, I mean it really is what sets us apart, are there other kinds of models that make sense? For example, and again, as soon as you give an example, then you start to constrain thinking, because you start putting boxes around people's ideas. But would it make more sense to just send Scott for the year, and yeah, he's with me on this. Instead of the constant pitch and catch, should we just pitch for a year and let him stay in one spot? I mean, that's the kinds of things, or where would that work or where would that not work? Where would it make sense and where would it not? How do we create models that are financially viable? How do we move this to scale? I was teasing with Philip as we were sitting down at lunch, and so I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm kind of looking around the room and I'm calculating the average age. Now, you're all here because you've done this at least 10 years. But we've got folks who've done this 20 years and 30 years. We just had someone who left who's done this for 25 years. His program is 30 years old. He's done it 25 years. Now, besides the gold medal he needs, not a gold watch, because that might suggest we're done, how is it that we raise up the next generation of people to step in and do this? How do we create incentives for that? And when I say incentives, I want us to think about incentives in the context of the work that we do, because everyone in here is paid, I assume, to be, well, not the retired guys who just keep coming back, but the rest of you are paid to be part of the student instructional experience. So how in that context do we make this work? When I think about ISP and I think about particularly study abroad, and Steve and I have had this conversation a lot of times, when we created the infrastructure we have now, in some ways we were like a startup, right? And the infrastructure you build for a startup company is not the same infrastructure you have for a sustainable company over a long period of time. So what do we need now to actually keep this engine going? And how is it that we continue to have the high quality, have the commitment that you all have had? Because the reason that you're in this room today doesn't have anything to do with the perks of taking a lot of very active, very curious young people halfway around the world and having them come into their adulthood in whole new ways on foreign soil. For all the joy of that, every one of you have known the pain of that. And it would have been easier to stay home and teach in Berkey Hall. There is no question it would have been easier. But you keep doing it and doing it and doing it because you know how it changes the lives of our students. And for that we say thank you. But if we believe that that's the kind of opportunity that every one of our students deserves, and the issue of access continues to plague me, When I look across our student body, I do not want the deciding factor to be income on who gets to go, because these opportunities to grow and the capacity to grow in these ways is not distributed by income. So thinking again how it is that we make this accessible to students, particularly around income, thinking about how we expand opportunities because there are more of us who are willing to do the work, thinking about how to make the work manageable so that the decision is not whether or not you write the next article that allows you, that builds your vita for promotion, but in fact creates a vibrant part of your job so that it's actually enhanced, not a distraction or a detraction. Those are my goals, and I don't know how to get there, but I think all of you have some ideas. And so Brett will talk to you about some of the real issues around study abroad and what our programs look like. But I'm asking you to think at a perhaps from a little different perspective and maybe at a little different level, and think about how is it going forward that we make sure, that we assure that Michigan State University students have an international experience that truly is transformative. I've said many times, MOOCs are not going to put us out of business, folks. Anyone who's ever had an 18-year-old knows that sending them to a residential university is a rite of passage and is the way in which we now look, most of us now look, for the next stage of our young people's development. We want them to come to these places. We want them to learn in community. We want them to interact with people who can help guide them and broaden their perspectives on the world. Michigan State does that in a way that very few other places in this country do it, and we're committed to do it in ways that very few other places in this country are doing it. For a large public institution, there is value added in this place, and we know that. We know it intuitively. We need to get better at being able to share the evidence of that. But I would ask you, as I thank you, to help me think about what's next for international experiences for our student. It's who we are, it's who we want them to be, and I just appreciate all you've done so far to bring us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Youatt. I'm humbled when I think about the last speaker that Dr. Youatt preceded on Friday, President Obama. I thought we should have reordered the order of our speakers today. But thank you very much for those remarks. And I want to echo some of what she said about the thoughts I had as I was signing those certificates for 80 of you, and I'm sure there's more, who have led study abroad for 10 years or more. I've been here for 5 years now, and I think I've met most of you in the room, but going through the exercise of trying to identify how long some of you have been at it was really an eye-opener. It was very humbling, and as we were reaching out to the colleges to go over those lists, it really brought home to me just the depth of commitment that's here. It's pretty amazing. It happens frequently in conferences in my circles that will be in a session where folks will be talking about how to engage faculty, how to have faculty development opportunities to encourage folks to get into this kind of work. And usually if they see me or one of my peers in the room, Michigan State is always mentioned as an example. And then they'll take a guess at how many faculty we have on our campus. We are the benchmark. When people say lots of faculty involved, Michigan State. Then they'll look over at us and say, how many faculty do you have doing this? 50? And I'll say, they'll say 100, 200. You know, we have about 300 faculty actively engaged with study abroad right now. In any given year, we have 200 faculty on deck, actually recruiting students to go on their programs, and usually about another 50 to 100 in the batter's box, you know, taking a year off or coming into the next cycle. It's pretty impressive. So just a lot of things going on. And it's really a pleasure for me to be part of that. I think I also need to recognize some of the predecessors that have come before and all the work that was done. And we've been working for a couple of years on a history project. I hope you enjoyed the slideshow. Some of you saw photos of yourself from 20 years ago. We've had some fun in the office pulling out those old photos. And I think Belinda, who's been in our office the longest, last night I saw photos of her with dreadlocks. Back in her early days. I won't say what year that was, but and actually, as we were going through the photos we had in the office, if any of you would like to share any cool artifacts, a brochure from the 70s or a photo of your group, we'd love to add some of that to our website. Because I'm just unveiling now, we have a new website about the history of study abroad. I invite you to take a look. It situates sort of the history of what was going on nationally with what was happening at MSU by phase over about 50, 60 years. And it has a shout out to some of my predecessors. Chuck Leozer has written a very interesting paper about his time with us, and there's an interview with Mick Vandenberg and Kathleen Fairfax as well. So I invite you to peruse that at your leisure and to share materials with us if you like. But what we wanted to talk about then, as you heard from Dr. Youatt, there is a real discussion going on campus about what next, where do we go next. I think the way our international footprint has evolved, in 1995, we were really focused on getting American students to go overseas. But as Dean Hanson mentioned in his open remarks, there's a lot of international learning happening here in East Lansing. When you have 6,500 international students among our learning community, it's not just what happens after you get on a plane. And as Dr. Youatt explained, there's a need to discuss how we want to structure things going forward. I'm going to bring it back to my level in terms of the programmings that live within our office and how we support them, and talk for a few minutes about some things that we see within the Office of Study Abroad moving forward. So I think you know that for many years we've been referred to as #1 in study abroad at the national level among public institutions. That's been #1 for enrollment. And as our peers catch up with MSU in our student enrollment, it's a good time to really take a look at how we can focus on quality while remaining in the top 10 in terms of quantity. So our vision that we want to talk about is about high quality, good value programming connected to university and college strategies, leveraging faculty research, working with strategic partners, and building on our history and culture. That's our vision moving forward. In addition to our leadership in sheer volume of programs and enrollment, we're also recognized for the following areas. Steve alluded to the research project with the CIC in New York University. It's being led by Professor John Dirks. That's a lot of activity. We're the only people in that space, and he's hosting a national symposium on March 20th and 21st about that, and a lot of conference presentations and publications coming out. Community engagement. That's a big part of our history. You've all heard the stories, maybe saw Ralph Smuckler's book recapping how we helped build universities in Africa starting back in the 1950s. And there are a lot of folks around here who really love to share with the students how to connect with communities overseas. And we've gathered those folks together just cheap sandwiches, not a nice meal like this, to share practice and to share what's going on. And that's emerged into a book project that Pat Crawford, I think, is here. Pat Crawford is leading, and it's got several chapters from MSU folks talking about how we do community engagement in study abroad, and it's a very distinctive body of work. We look forward to that coming out. We're also well known for our internships abroad. Our internship model that is co-managed through the colleges is very distinctive, and we continue to work on a conference, the only conference in the world that focuses on internships abroad. It was started by 2 MSU faculty, Dan Ferguson, who's now gone on to Pittsburgh State, and Rick Paulson. And it's now being managed with professional management, but it's a very interesting space for MSU. Our work with internships and study abroad has also helped us develop a series of workshops with career services that help students take their enthusiasm for this, it changed my life, this transforming experience, and really helps them distill that, reflect on it in ways that mean something to employers. Employers are expecting enthusiasm from every young person, and they get enthusiasm from most study abroad experiences, but we work with the students to try to unpack that in ways that mean something in the interview process. We're also leading an effort within the CIC to look at broader ways of measuring our participation. So our only national data counts only credit-bearing activities, and as Dr. Youatt referred a minute ago, there's a lot more going on than that. We suspect there's anywhere from 750 to 1,500 students a year going overseas, doing things not for credit that they wouldn't be doing if it weren't for MSU. Right now we have difficulty counting those things, but we're working on it with our peers and leading some conversations there. We're also advocating very strongly that we should not be excluding international students from those numbers. The only national reporting mechanism run by IIE, it's called Open Doors, started counting study abroad in 1986. There were 2 years when they included non-residents, non-U.S. citizens or permanent residents, but they haven't done it since. And it's, with 6,500 international students here on campus, many of those want to go back out the door and benefit from our catalog for an experience in a third country. One of our peers, Purdue University, 15% of their learning abroad activity was with international students. Yet we're not counting that in our national data. So we're in some conversations there about changing our metrics and getting better at how we support and recognize a growing volume of activity. And finally, I think as Steve mentioned when he introduced Dr. Youatt, we're very active in the space of early programming and what that can mean on student success. Helping students persevere in their studies and graduate on time are important university goals. I've got one kid hopefully graduating in May from here, another kid coming into the system. They're certainly important goals for me. And we know that there's a lot of data at MSU and elsewhere which shows that study abroad participants enjoy higher retention rates, so they engage and stick around and finish up. They get done faster, so they graduate almost a semester faster than their peers here at MSU, and they finish with a higher cumulative GPA. We know that from MSU data. It's been replicated in other large studies of similar institutions around the country. There are not a lot of studies, but they all come to the same conclusion. Now, there's a real problem with that data. It's the chicken and the egg. The researchers in the room, you'll say, well, okay, but simply observing how that profile compares to others doesn't mean that it's a result of the study abroad experience, does it? It could be that the students who choose to study abroad come to the university with those attributes, and it's not a result of it. So we have a real problem in terms of demonstrating causality. But there are studies that do address this chicken versus the egg problem in interesting ways. And do tease it out with good control groups. What we're saying is that without claiming causality, it's a very important step to begin to track these rates on a regular basis and to make sure that study abroad is included in the toolkit of retention and completion strategies that the university has at its disposal. Particularly within the goals of Bolder by Design, the first imperative on enhancing the student experience, where the university is really looking at these targets, study abroad can play an important role. We have some initial data there. We'd like to work further on collecting that data more frequently. There's also interesting research that shows the potential impact on particular populations. For example, there's a large-scale study at the University of Georgia system that showed that African Americans who studied abroad were 13% more likely to graduate than their peers. Research from the University of Texas at Austin on the time to degree completion shows that study abroad participation is correlated to increased graduation rates, and that the more academically at-risk students, the stronger the correlation is. We hosted a series of seminars last fall with the Provost office. We had Heather Barkley-Hamir here talking about her dissertation work. And I know that as a result of that, some of you are already rethinking your GPA requirements, because there's a real impact that they can have on at-risk students. Dean Hanson also mentioned a campus discussion on recent research with this book. And I invite you to join us. We're going to be having 2 faculty discussions. They're not sequential. You can come to one or the other or both, but both times we'll attack the same subject. One on March 10th and the other one on March 25th. So it'll be sandwiches, it'll be in the International Center, and we'll send an email reminder to that. We've been working through the book with the college representatives, with our faculty learning community, with the office, and we'd like now to organize some sessions to engage faculty leaders, as well as different sessions for advisors on campus to really talk about what the literature tells us. Through these discussions, we're focusing particularly on students with high financial need, those who are first in their family to go to college, and underrepresented minorities. In the next slides, I'm going to show that we're doing pretty well in this area overall, but we also think it's an area where we can do a lot more, and so we'd really like to continue to focus on these ones. So this graph shows us that actually our study abroad participation students are more diverse, less white, if you will, than the undergraduate population as a whole. Study abroad is the inside of that donut, and the total undergraduate population is the outer ring. So you can see that it is more diverse. This is largely due to a couple of key programs that take a lot of students overseas. They're really wonderful programs, but if we lost those couple of programs, we wouldn't look so diverse. So we still think there's a lot of room here for improvement in reaching out to those populations. And we're working hard to form additional alliances with different programs around campus to reach those particular populations. This one shows that it's not just rich kids who study abroad. You know, study abroad is expensive. Back when we started in 1995 with our big targets, the order from President McPherson was to run study abroad at the same cost as being on campus. That has not been possible for a good long time. We do have a few programs which are less expensive to be on campus, and we do promote those. They're primarily semester programs. Overall, study abroad does add expense to a student's experience. And there is quite a solid myth around the country and on campus that it's really only for the more affluent students. The data doesn't show that. Essentially, when you see that the percentage of Pell-eligible students, the high-need students, in the total undergraduate population is almost the same as the study abroad sample, it shows that we have about the same participation rate. Nonetheless, as Dr. Youatt alluded to, we don't want income to be the main barrier, to be the only filter for allowing students to go overseas. So we're particularly focusing on high-need students. The Office of Study Abroad awards about $430,000 a year in scholarships. Half of that is from endowments, the other half is from operating funds, and 72% of our recipients are high-need students. So we are reaching them in a solid way, but we want to try to find ways to reach them earlier. And then finally, the third target we're focusing are first-generation students. I was the first one to go to college in my family. I grew up on a farm. My parents hadn't gone to college. When it came time to go, I was in a really small school, had decent grades, decent test scores. I had no clue how to get there. It was really tough. And so when you're trying to make that major transition to higher education and what it means to be at the university, and if you're the first in your family, figuring out how to study abroad on top of that, it's a pretty tall order. So we also think that we want to reach out more to students who are the first in their family to come here, and that we can have some messaging to them to reach them in a better way. So for funding opportunities, I'd like to share 3 examples of how we're encouraging students to plan earlier for their study abroad. Most of our scholarships are what we call just-in-time scholarships. I found the program I really want to go on. I'm excited. I'm so excited about it. And I'm applying for everything I can for scholarships, and I hope I can make it. We have about 1,000 students a year in that box who don't make it. We have about 1,000 students a year who apply, who don't go, and the primary reason is financial. So we're trying to help them with some ideas for planning scholarships. I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first one is some funding from the Provost office to James Madison College to look at a new type of program where students take a spring semester And the culmination of that course in the spring semester is a 2-week program in London. And entrance into the course means entrance into the program and comes with a certain level of financial need. So it's a pilot experience with some interesting results coming out of James Madison with some support from the Provost Office. And we'd like to encourage more efforts of that nature. The second example is later this semester, we will issue a call for new program proposals to China, faculty-led programs to China in summer 2015 that will focus on these key targets and will include a significant scholarship load. So entrance to the program brings the scholarship with it. These will be funded through a grant from the Coca-Cola Foundation as part of the national 100,000 strong China initiative of the Obama administration. And the third one, I'm excited to announce a new planning scholarship pilot with the College of Communication Arts and Sciences. I think this was a brainchild of Janet Lilly, who was here a minute ago. And so next summer, during AOP, ComArts will select 10 students to receive a $2,000 study abroad scholarship voucher, and they will have the first 2 years of their studies to use that voucher. So instead of finding the program first and then hoping for financial aid, it's saying, here's a voucher, let us help you find a program that's gonna get you there. So these are just three general examples of where we're in a space where we're working on some pilots, working for some formula, some different ways of really reaching those 3 target populations. We hope that by promising money to students with a high financial need early in their academic career, we'll encourage them to participate in a study abroad program that they otherwise might not have thought it was a possibility for them. And by doing that, we hope this will also increase their retention rates and decrease their time to graduation. We know that study abroad can be one of those highly engaged learning activities. Wait, what did you call it? Hills? Hills? So study abroad can be a hills, high impact learning strategies. I don't know if that works for people though. A hillser? Are we hillsers? And we also know from MSU data that it counts towards the degree and can actually help students finish earlier. These are important goals for the university, and even more importantly for the families we serve. In an effort to support the MSU neighborhood concept and help provide resources to students where they live, we have also developed Study Abroad in the Neighborhood, where our peer advisors are working with neighborhood engagement centers to offer one-on-one advising to students. These will become regular offerings after our pilot run this year, and we hope that we'll reach more students by being right there where they live and eat and sleep. So these are part of a lot of conversations we need to have as the university regroups on our next steps for study abroad. We've had a record number of program cancellations in recent years due to low enrollment. In those growth years, we'd have 1 or 2 programs a summer that wouldn't go because of low enrollment. Lately, it's been 30 or more. And that means 30 or more faculty who have been working extremely hard to reach their recruitment targets. It's become an increasing struggle for you. We've noticed that, and it's part of the conversation in terms of the signaling that Dr. Youatt said, where she's looking at, what did you say, moving us out of a startup way of looking at it and a startup funding model to perhaps some different options there. So the senior administration is well aware of that strain within our systems, and there are conversations going on about what could be done to address that. Part of that also includes assessing the capacity and whether our offer meets the demand of our students or perhaps exceeds it in some ways. So what we're proposing is a vision where we are leading in quality and in the top 10 for quantity. We're aiming for high-quality, good-value programming connected to university and college strategies, leveraging faculty research, working with strategic partners, and building on our history and culture. We'll continue to engage in these conversations, as will senior administration, as you've heard today. We'll also continue to engage our students where they live, in the neighborhoods, and in the ways that they communicate. One way we're doing this is through a new means of communication. And so to conclude my remarks today, I'm happy to unveil our new MSU Abroad app. It hasn't quite cleared iTunes yet, but it will in the next couple of days, and then be available for Android as well. It's really enhancing our advising capabilities in the neighborhoods and provides us an interactive way for students and parents alike to see what MSU has to offer. Got it?
Make sure they open it. It's not, nobody can hear you over there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah. Is it on?
So it should come up. It might take a minute. Give it a second. One more. There you go. There you go.
Okay, so I think I'm too old for this actually, but here's the app. So, whoops, done. All right. So down here at the bottom, it's got our events calendar. You can look at student photos, student profiles. So here's a story of Allison. Or here's a story from Justine. Here, you can contact us. There's photo decks of here's a program in Antarctica. And you can scroll through different photos. Here is it takes you to the search engine for the program. And here's the calendar of events where your different recruiting sessions are always listed. Here it talks about why you study abroad, how it can enhance your MSU degree, highlights of our different programs, freshman seminars, how to get started, how to do your application, information on program costs, financial assistance, different degree options. So, we're hoping that this will connect with our students in a new way. As I said, it should clear iTunes any day. We were hoping to be ready for today. It's not quite up there yet, and so you can use it on your mobile phone. And the peer advisors that are active in the neighborhoods are equipped with instruments like this, and so they can do stand-up advising with the students. We'll be unveiling this in a much bigger way at our study abroad fair in the fall semester.